Let's look at the effects of media on both physical and mental health and well-being. Research suggests that a number of negative effects of media content on females in particular. For example, media use among pre-adolescent girls, so these are girls around the age of 11 or 12, that predicted disordered eating 1 year later. And there was no such effect for boys. The researchers concluded that females in particular internalize the thin ideal that's depicted in media, that having a thin body is the ideal sort of body type. Other research has demonstrated similar effects among older college-aged women, in that, again, with exposure to media that promotes the thin ideal, young women internalize the thin ideal, and as a result may engage in disordered eating in order to achieve that thin ideal. But this isn't to say that boys and men are not affected as well. Exposure to media content also relates to lower body satisfaction and body esteem, as well as excessive exercise among males. So overall, media content is related to disordered eating among men and women, but it looks different for men and women. Like we saw, for women, it is this internalization of the thin ideal that relates to disordered eating behaviors in an effort to be thinner. Males, however, tend to engage in more excessive, unhealthy exercise in an effort to be more muscular or fit the muscular ideal that we see in the media for men. There are similar effects for mental well-being. For example, television exposure at time 1 is linked to children's self-esteem 2 years later, but the direction of the relationship differs as a function of gender and race ethnicity. For example, television exposure at time 1 was positively related to white boys' self-esteem 1 year later. It was negatively related to white females, African American females, and African American males' self-esteem 1 year later. Why? Well, if we think about the type of content that's present in media, we see that white males in general have better jobs, they're more financially stable, and females tend to be maybe more subservient to males, and there might not be as much representation of different races and ethnicities in television today, which would explain why for certain people, exposure to television would increase self-esteem, whereas for other people it might decrease self-esteem. So therefore, we see how dispositional factors like gender and race or ethnicity can differentially influence the effect of media exposure on children's self-esteem. Now, self-esteem is also affected by online communication. For example, we know that adolescents and college students and most everyone spend quite a lot of time on social media. And this use corresponds with the number of friends or connections that they are able to make. And the number of friends and connections that they make relates to the type of feedback that they receive. Research shows that positive feedback in the form of comments or likes relates positively to adolescent self-esteem, but negative feedback, so negative comments or the absence of likes, is negatively related to self-esteem. In another recent study that I've done, we looked at the effect of likes on Instagram on young females' self-concept. And what we found is that if other people received more likes than the females themselves in our study, they actually felt worse about themselves. But if the females in our study received more likes than other people, there was no difference. They didn't feel any better or any worse about themselves. So something as simple as a like can have consequential impacts on how individuals feel about their own bodies and their own overall well-being. So overall, there are gender and race ethnicity differences in how media both positively and negatively influence our physical and our mental well-being. On social media, the tone, as well as the amount of feedback, can also influence whether or not we are positively or negatively affected.